Well, this ended up being a much longer break than I really planned for it to be, but after ending up with more than 30 minutes of edited video, just preparing all the parts for our rows, I thought it was better to go ahead and split it and make it 2 videos. So today in part 2, we will get the rows completed. We have all of our component parts ready to go, so let's get back to work on our forged iron rows. The next thing I want to do for our rows is file this square tenon on the top of the stem so that the square hole on our pedals fits over the tenon. And for that I put it in this little jig that helps hold it. It's got a tapered hole in the top of it there, and it gets it up above the vise, and that will help when we start setting the pedals on there. So just put that in there so it holds. Now I want to create a nice square tenon with a nice shoulder down here on the bottom. This is definitely too long at the moment. So I'm going to trim that off real quick. I'm going to just taper the top of this a little bit to make it easier to get these on. This will actually be bigger than the hole, but I want it to be a drive-on fit. I don't want it to be loose and floppy when it's done. I want it to be a good tight fit. And to set the pedals and the sepal down, I just use a little monkey tool. And you want these to all go on one time. If you have to take them on and off, they're going to get loose, and you want everything to be tight. So make sure you put these on in the right order. And also look at this and see if your cuts for the pedals line up exactly on top of each other. You really don't want them to do that. You want them to be offset. So if it's lining up perfectly, turn it one. The one with just 4 doesn't have that problem though, because it's the same no matter how you turn it. So that's good and tight. Now we just need to make a rivet out of that. Just want to heat up the very end of the rivet and work it down slowly until you get a nice head. Torch tends to complain with the heat coming right back at the torch tip there. This is a Dillon or a Henrob torch. Runs on only 4 psi of oxygen and acetylene. Very gentle, real good for this lightweight stuff like this. I'll just finish that off with a rivet setter, just to make sure everything is good and tight. At this point, we don't really need this jig anymore. That's all it really does for us. But there, that's on there, and it's not all wobbly. Now we can just go ahead and put this in the vise. And now we have to shape all of these pedals. Most of the shaping will be done with this pair of round nose pliers. Just added some extension handles to keep your hand away from the heat, and bent one nose back a little bit, so if you need to bend pedals back this way, you can. This gets to be kind of a fiddly process, but If you can hold the torch in one hand and the pliers in the other. Little hook also helps you just hook the back of the pedals and pull them up when you need to. So the first pedal, I'm bringing up the biggest one that we didn't overlap when we were preparing these. At least it's not supposed to be overlapped. You have to be careful. Even with a gentle torch like this, it's real easy to burn things. We want to roll this one up, and this becomes the very center of our rose. And kind of roll these back. And think about how open the rose should be. This is a smaller rose, so it may not be as fully open as a big rose would be. We're going to bring the other petals in this layer up. Try and get them to overlap the way they're supposed to. Probably nobody else ever notices if you don't overlap them right, but just in case, might as well put the effort into it. This is all just art at this point. This is just, what do you want your rose to look like? Some people do very little. Some people fiddle with these quite a bit. I'm probably more on the fiddly side. Yep, you can see I burned a little bit off there. That's a place the aphids got to it, apparently. I can live with a little bit of that, but if I do too much of it, it's time to start over. And as you do one thing, it undoes something else, and you got to go back and forth and back and forth. So you might spend a half an hour or so messing around with this stage of the flower. But you can see right there, that looks like a rose right in the middle. If I'm doing a bud, I just use this one set of petals. We start bringing the rest of these up. I'm going to go ahead and bring all these petals up, and then I'll start rolling them out. Try different things at different times and see what technique you like. I don't think I ever do any two of these real close to exactly the same way. And it's nice if you can work all the way around the vise, or at least more sides than I can with the camera right there. Generally I can get to 3 sides of my vise very nicely. There's that. I'll come back and do the the inner or the middle set here. That actually went quite nicely. They don't always go quite that smoothly, but some days you get lucky. Usually if you're working for the camera, it doesn't go smoothly. And now we'll do this part. And these sometimes have little curls in them and little twists and just whatever you see in your head. Now it is a good idea to try and make sure these aren't going to be out where they're going to poke people. So be careful about too sharp a spike or sticking it way out the side. Although on a rose bud, you might actually install this upside down because they would not have opened all the way and they'd still be pointing upward. This is the part that covers the flower bud before it blooms. And occasionally I'll do some of these up and some of them down just for that reason, if they're not all open yet. So something like that. So that is it for the flower portion. We now need to do the leaves, then add the leaves, and we need to put a thorn on it. So set the leaves up to look fairly symmetrical on the three stems. Make sure the front of the leaves are all on the same side. And just get the angles, something you'll like. We're going to adjust them a little later. And then this is where this torch really pays off because it is so nice and gentle. It's just wonderful for these delicate welds. You can still burn it in half if you're not careful. And try not to get this too fat and blobby. You want it to look like it grew this way. You don't want it to look like it was welded. And you might need to come to the anvil and just even it up. And then perhaps a little filing. Usually a little round file right in here is about all it needs. Now we need to weld the leaves to the flower, and typically they weld up here fairly high so that it'll fit in a vase. I think I'm going to bend that back just a little bit. If you get everything to balance in place, it leaves a hand free, otherwise you have to hold this in a pair of tongs while you tack weld it, and that gets to be a real nuisance. But make sure the flower is supported when you do this, otherwise the weight of the flower will bend this or break it when you get it up to welding heat. Again, yes, I've done that. It's not the end of the world because you are welding, you can put it back together, but better if you don't have to. The first goal is just to get a little tack weld. And if you need to, you can roll it over and it'll all stay put. And the thorn is just a little bit of welding rod. I'll put a little puddle in here. And try to leave the rod stuck in it. And I just burn off a little bit there. Now if you need to, go back and heat that up and forge it a little bit, and I think I will. I think it'll look a little better. Torch weld survives a little light forging way better than something like a MIG weld would. You might need to do the thorn, but I think I'm okay with that the way it is right now. The thorn almost always needs just a little bit of filing to kind of make sure it hooks over cleanly. And on most projects, I try real hard not to leave any sharp spots. But I think the thorn is more believable if it's just almost sharp enough to be a problem. Not enough to draw blood, but close. This is where you get your last little bit of artistry. I like to just put a little bit of a curviness in the stem here. And just heat it up a little bit for starting at the bottom. Work my way up. I don't want to make it too curved because then it doesn't fit in a vase. At one point I made them very curved. I made little wooden bases for them, but I think people like these better either just sitting on a shelf so you can see the whole thing or in an actual bud vase. So it's been a very long time since I worried about a wooden base for one of these things. Speaking of bases, we still need to make a base for our Friedrich's cross. You could do some of this cold in a pair of bending forks. I'm going to need this warm to put some paste wax on it here in a minute anyway, so. We're just almost done. And I'm not twisting, I'm just bending. You could twist if you wanted to, I suppose. And then this section here, I want it to kind of lean forward, away from the leaves. And I'm going to curve the stem with the leaves back a little bit. Curve the central leaf forward. A little twist in the other two. This is what I meant when I said we'll do some more adjustments here. There. That's pretty much all of the sculptural work that this is going to get. The next thing I want to do is I want to heat this up, and I'm going to bronze brush it. So I open the vise just enough to be able to cradle this so I can get in there and brush that. And I very gently heat the rose up just to a dull glow, and then as it cools down to a black heat is when I'll go ahead and brush it. You're not trying to do the entire rose this way, you're just trying to get some highlights on the petals. Hopefully you can see that. Then I need to just give the whole thing a light heat so we can wax it. And just hot enough to steam. Looks like I need a new brush here. This one doesn't have much in the way of bristles anymore. And that is pretty much that. That's just a look at how I have always made roses. There are other more traditional ways, starting with bigger, heavier material and splitting it all out and drawing out those little split pieces into the petals. And I do plan to do that one of these days. I've never tried a rose that way, and I think it would be a lot of fun to make one. So I'm going to do a little research and see if I can learn how to do that. I think I will create a playlist for forged roses. Then I'll look around and I'll not only put this video in that playlist, but I'll put some videos of people doing those more traditional roses in that playlist. So if you're interested in some of those techniques, by all means, check out that playlist and give some of those videos a try. This certainly deviates from pure and simple blacksmithing. It really gets into sculptural work. The torch is an integral part of doing something like this. It's not something you're going to do with just forge, hammer, and anvil, but they are a lot of fun to do. And down in the description, I'll have those links for people who sell pre-cut rose blanks if you want to do something like this yourself. And if you know of somebody that sells those blanks that I did not put in that list in the description, go ahead and leave a link down in the comments section so everybody else can find it. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button. Feel free to stick around, watch a few of the other videos, share the videos with your friends, but then by all means, make time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, but stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next one. Doesn't smell like a rose. If you would like to provide financial support for the videos here at Black Bear Forge, there are links in the video description to both PayPal and Patreon. These are merely donations. The content is free and will remain free.